welcome to the Legit Football NFL podcast. Brian McFadden here, joined by the Pro Football Demon, Rich Jodice, and Cam Bowie Bomani of the Independent Intel podcast. We are going to be previewing what many say is the best weekend of football, divisional round, playoff football. We've got 4 games to talk about. We're going to break them down into detail. I'm sure we'll get no less than 7 hot takes from the Pro Football Demon. That's his brand, and he sticks to it. And Cam Bowie's going to bring lots of awesome intel as well. Rich, got to start with you. Haven't been on with you in a little while. So excited to have you on again. No Jets, no Dolphins. Yeah. But we're still excited, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. We have a Jets fan, a Dolphins fan, and what I just learned, a Saints fan. So we're all, at least we get to watch football. That's what's great about football. Is
guys with no actual rooting interest in the playoffs. Right. Let's get together and talk some playoffs.
And barely a quarterback between us.
Barely, yeah. Maybe the 3 combined, like yes. Transformers style or Voltron, but yeah, not looking good. Cam Bowie, obviously, Rich hinted you're a Saints fan. No rooting interest here. Not even an NFC South team anymore because the Bucs got absolutely demolished. So how are you feeling going into divisional round weekend?
I'm feeling good. Made 6 predictions for Wild Card weekend. Got all of them right. So just trying to keep the hot streak going. I feel like, Saturday's pretty self-explanatory, but Sunday we have 2, in my opinion, coin flip matchups. So can't wait to dive into it and analyze what's what.
So your predictions, were they game picks? Did you pick all 6 games correctly? Or are you specific stats or props?
Oh, I picked all 6 games correctly.
Look at you. I went 5-1 and I was pretty impressed with myself. So.
I lost 2 games. I picked the Seahawks.
What? See what I mean? Hey guys, yes, did I not say that Rich would bring the hot takes? Even last week he retrospectively brought a hot take, so I'm expecting more. Definitely going to remind you multiple times on this, Rich, that you picked the Chiefs to not even make the playoffs.
And I picked the Broncos to win the Super Bowl.
And you picked the Broncos to win the Super Bowl. I wasn't going to bring that one up, but you did. So let's go ahead and dive in. We've got our producer, Anthony Wayner, behind the scenes, already ready with a ton of stats. If you're just listening to this as a podcast, going to always remind you, check out the video on YouTube because there's so many stats that we don't even get to them all, but you get to see them scroll across the bottom if you're watching the video version of this. Let's go ahead and jump in, guys. We'll start with the Saturday games in order and go all the way through to the 2 Sunday games first. Number 1 seed, Kansas City Chiefs, that team that Rich thought would not even make the playoffs. Interested to hear your thoughts on that. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that many had ruled off halfway through the season and got beat pretty handily by this Chiefs team earlier in the season at kind of what I think is the turning point of when they started to get better. And we saw the huge leap by Trevor Lawrence. Got to start with you on this one, Rich. Jacksonville Jaguars, 8.5-point underdogs. Is that a fair spread, and how do you see this game playing out?
I think that's a fair spread. I think this game is going to feel closer than it actually is. I think there'll be times when we're watching it and we're going to feel like Jacksonville might be in it, but then Kansas City's just going to kind of blow the door open again. They're just going to be outmatched. Trevor Lawrence, making the mistakes he made in that Chargers game, he's not going to have an opportunity to do that and just not get demolished here. Kansas City isn't also. I can't see them leaving the door open for the Jaguars to come in and put up 31 unanswered. So his mistake window is going to be very narrow. Patrick Mahomes doesn't really make mistakes. Like in the beginning of the season when we were talking about them, I said he'll have streaks where he will do that for a handful of games. I thought, to go back to them missing the playoffs, I thought he was going to struggle a bit with this new receiving core without having Tyreek there. I am never going to doubt Travis Kelce again. I thought we were going to see him maybe hit a wall this year, and we didn't.
He broke through that wall.
He broke through. Yeah, he busted through it. So I like Kansas City to win. I like them to win comfortably.
So Cam Bowie, this is one of the games where I'll go ahead and say I like the Chiefs to win this game, but I don't think it's going to be as cut and dry as Rich is alluding to. If you look at DVOA over the last 6 weeks, including Wild Card weekend, the Jaguars are actually 3rd. And once again, DVOA, defense adjusted value over average. It's trying to gauge an entire team and how much better they are than an average NFL team in that season or in that period of time, in this case 6 weeks. And they are over 33% better than the average team, ahead of KC, who's 5th. Not a big difference there, but try to outline a possible path for the Jags to win this game, Camboy.
I think it's going to start with their pass rush. Last week, they got to the quarterback, 24 total pressures. Josh Allen was a monster. Travon Walker, I thought, let his presence be known as well. They're just going to have to win the line of scrimmage. I think that's a big deal in beating Kansas City. We saw last year when they played Cincinnati in the AFC Championship, Cincinnati dropped 7 in coverage and they rushed 4. And those guys did a pretty good job of containing the pocket, preventing Mahomes from getting outside of it and extending plays, and kind of made him nickel and dime down the field. I think Jacksonville has the pass rush to maybe execute a similar game plan to effectiveness. But my real issue with the Jaguars is, for the most part, towards the second half of the season, they started slow, like a lot. Started slow against Dallas, they won. Started slow against the Titans, they won. Started slow against the Chargers, they won. And Kansas City is an offense where if you spot them 20 points like they did when they met in the middle of the season, that's enough for them to pull away for a victory. So I think Jacksonville controlling the line of scrimmage defensively and offensively, getting off to a fast start. Every possession doesn't have to end in a touchdown, but it has to end in points. And it has to end with some type of offensive effectiveness to where as the game goes on, you have a level of momentum that's conducive for you to pull off the upset.
Yeah, I think that's an important note here. You're not going to completely shut down the Chiefs' offense. That just doesn't happen. Like, I don't care if it's in the Super Bowl, if the Chiefs make it, whoever they play, you have to slow them down and outscore them. I know that sounds like, oh, you got to score more than the other guys, but you have to just assume that, hey, this game's going to be at least somewhat of a high-scoring game. We need to be the one with more points. So I like that you mentioned they can't get off to a slow start. Anthony with the stat at the bottom. Patrick Mahomes QB rating versus the blitz, 113.5. So this isn't a team that you can just bring a whole bunch of extra rushers. I think I saw a stat, I don't remember exactly what it is, that he's got the NFL record for the most scrambles without a sack. I don't remember what that number was. Like, you can't, if he scrambles, he's at least going to get positive yardage. So this is the guy that even if you get pressure on him, it doesn't really mean he's going to be any less successful. But they're definitely susceptible on the defensive side of the ball. They've been great on the pass rush lately, especially Chris Jones. The first stat that Anthony put up, he had 48 pressures in the last 10 games. That's insane because that's almost always coming up the middle. They do put Chris Jones on the outside sometimes, and that can flush out Trevor Lawrence. And Lawrence, as great as he's been, Rich, we haven't seen him make these kind of crazy off-platform plays that Mahomes or an Allen or even a Herbert will make. It's just that he's got such a great arm. He's really excelled at outside the numbers passes. If the Chiefs get to him up the middle and Lawrence is flushed out, how do you think the Jags quarterback will respond to that?
Well, let me go back to Chris Jones really quick. I'm glad you brought that up. The first game they played, he was a disruptive force on that line. They're going to have trouble running the ball against him. And I think I could see Lawrence making some mistakes. I can see him having a hard time getting comfortable. And like you said, he doesn't, for some reason, Patrick Mahomes, he runs around and he's just a little bit faster than whoever's chasing him, and he has.
It's weird because he doesn't seem like a fast dude, but he always just seems like a step ahead of whoever.
Always seems to get away and then make that big play, but I don't think Trevor Lawrence has a reliable safety blanket like Mahomes does and Travis Kelce either. Maybe he hits Evan Ingram. We've seen Evan Ingram come alive, but I don't know. I don't see Lawrence early in this game. If that starts to happen, I think it's going to take him a little while to try to gain his composure. We're going to see what type of quarterback he is right now. He's still young. It's his first year with Doug Peterson. But I don't know. I don't have faith that he will be able to just hold that off and not create a hole big enough for them to bounce back and win that game.
Two things that concern me on the Jacksonville side. One, as good as Etienne has been as a playmaker, he actually has struggled with pass protection all year, to the point where they don't even necessarily leave him back there anymore. They'll flare him out there in the flats and have him, run a little dig route so that Lawrence has at least a little bit of a safety blanket, get the ball in the space with Etienne. But pass protection has been a problem. If you got Chris Jones coming right up the middle without additional protection, that spells trouble. And secondly, one thing, even with their surge, Kambui, that Trevor Lawrence has struggled with is disguised coverages. We actually saw it last week. Staley with the Chargers. There was a lot of confusion early in the game. They overcame it. They made adjustments. What Doug Peterson did was fantastic in the second half and really towards the end of the second quarter. But you got Steve Spagnuolo on the other side, whereas they may not have the talent on defense, the Chiefs, but they certainly are good at scheming things up. I think they'll throw some stuff to confuse him. How confident are you that Lawrence could overcome something like that, Kambui?
It's 50-50. I think Lawrence at this point of his career, and he's relatively a young quarterback prospect. His game is really predicated off of timing. So if the pressure's blocked up pretty well and the receivers are able to get through their routes, he's hitting them in stride. If not, like you said, they could bring disguised coverages to get him off his first or second read. And he has a gunslinger mentality, so he's very conducive at times to just throw it through a brick wall, no matter if it's double or triple coverage. So, like a lot of young quarterbacks in the game today, when he's blocked up pretty well, he's able to go through his progressions and hit the necessary reads. He's a special talent. When he's not, you get the 4 interception first half we saw last weekend. I thought the Chargers for a half did a pretty good job of getting to him with 4. And Kansas City is second in the NFL in sacks behind Philly with, I think, 55. And Chris Jones, he's a load. And he's a guy you're going to have to double. And by doubling him, you're freeing up Karlaftis. You're freeing up Frank Clark on the edge. And so now, you just talked about how ETN struggles in pass protection. You're going to have opportunities to get to him at times where it's just Lawrence by himself dropping back, going through his reads. So it's really going to come down to, can Jacksonville just block it up particularly well and allow him to get to his first and second reads and really complete those high-level passes? Because if he can, this could be a pretty close game. If they can't, it's going to be a long day for the Jaguar offense.
I think Jacksonville's going to need to take a few shots, deep shots. If there is a noticeable weakness in this Chiefs, it is the secondary. And Lawrence has shown that most games he's going to take a few shots downfield. If they hit 1 or 2 of those, especially early, if they can get a little bit of an edge and then just play smart football, if Doug Peterson can make adjustments throughout the game, I think there's a shot. I think that's the path. Do I think it'll happen? No. I'm going to pick Kansas City to win this game. If I was betting the spread, though, I would not bet that 8.5-point spread. I know it's in KC, Arrowhead. It's going to be a crazy raucous place, but what Peterson has done with this Jags team, how well they've played on the defensive side of the ball, too. You've seen Javon Walker come along. You mentioned Kimberly. Josh Allen has been an absolute beast. Tyson Campbell is actually playing really, really solid. Probably maybe a top 10, 12 corner at this point in the league. They've got playmakers. But it's still Andy Reid off of a bye, this amazing Chiefs offense. So I'm officially picking the Chiefs to win but not cover. Rich, you're doubling down on your Chiefs to win and cover?
Yes, I am. The Chiefs are going to win and cover. Andy Reid, again, Jacksonville makes a mistake. You don't have Brandon Staley on the opposite sideline. You have Andy Reid, and he's got Patrick Mahomes in his pocket. So it's going to be tough to come back from.
And Kim Bowie.
Yeah, I'm going to lean with PFD on that one. I got them to cover. I actually have the Chiefs winning by double digits. Kind of like what he said early on. It'll be close early on, but I feel Kansas City eventually pulls away because they've been here before. They experienced, got one of the best quarterbacks in the game. They're going to maximize the possessions that they do have and execute accordingly.
But hey, Jacksonville Jaguar fans, you're in the divisional round of playoffs. Just be happy you're here. Rich, you had your
we're just happy to be here.
Trevor Lawrence is just happy to be here. Just be excited that you're there. The future is incredibly bright with all the young talent you have and with a coach not named Urban Meyer.
Yes.
With a Super Bowl resume. So hey, already the favorites next year to win the AFC South. There's your silver lining. Let's go ahead and move to the other Saturday game. Third time these teams are playing. We saw 2 divisional rematches last week, Dolphins-Miami and Ravens-Bengals. Both games ended up very close. You play a team 3 times. Seahawks were at least, I guess we saw 3 last week. The Seahawks were at least winning at halftime. New York Giants taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Giants absolutely playing as one of the hottest teams to end the season. I mean, you look at Daniel Jones. Rich, you and I had a bet.
Yeah.
that Danny Dimes may end up on the Dolphins at some point, in which case I'd have to I don't even remember what the
You'd have to get a Daniel Jones jersey.
I have to get a Daniel Jones jersey and wear it on the show. Yeah. Not only is that not going to happen, but Daniel Jones looks like, at least for the next few years, he's the future quarterback with the Giants. But they take on an Eagles team where the fall we saw at the end of the season was very directly tied to Jalen Hurts being injured. He wasn't 100% in Week 18, but they got the bye. They got a week off. He's off the injury report completely. Lane Johnson off the injury report. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson also, he's been activated off IR. Looks like he might have a chance to at least play some snaps in this. Eagles getting healthy at the right time. Gambui, I'll start with you on this one. What's the path for the Giants here? We've seen the Eagles have some weakness, but I still think, personally, roster-wise, top to bottom, they're the best in the NFL. What do the Giants have to do to win this game?
I think that it's really going to start with Daniel Jones being able to throw under duress, particularly well. Philadelphia, best sacking defense in the league over 70 sacks. And I just feel like right now, on paper, this isn't a great matchup for the Giants because they utilize Daniel Jones' dual threat ability to get their offense in motion. We saw it last week against the Vikings. It was really Danny Dimes' legs that kind of initiated that uptick offensively that allowed him to move the ball up and down the field. And Philly's defensive line is the truth. I mean, 70 sacks, tackles for loss, 97 of them, they're fourth in takeaways. So his ability at times to be able to stand in the pocket, make the necessary reads, go through his progressions, and complete the ball at a high rate is going to be key because I think they're going to contain him well. They got the backers to spy him well. He's not going to be able to have as much effectiveness with the direct run, RPOs, things of that nature. So best chance the Giants have is he's going to have to win it in the pocket. And think about Jones. He's a rhythm passer as well. There's times where he's on and there's times where he's off. And it's kind of a coin flip when it comes to his passing ability within the pocket. If he's on, they have a great shot. But I just feel like he's going to be running for his life throughout the game. So that kind of gives the Giants a minimal chance in my eyes to come out with the victory.
And Rich, huge advantage, an upgrade in the secondary for the Eagles versus what he got to play last week against Minnesota. Minnesota with one of the worst pass defense in the NFL throughout the entire season. Now you got to go up against Darius Slay, James Bradbury. I mentioned Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back in that safety spot. An amazing pass rush. Linebackers that have been very, very good. Where's the weakness? You know, what?
Right.
I'm having I know this is actually a popular pick among media members is that the Giants will pull off this upset. I'm honestly having trouble seeing it. Like the games that the Eagles have lost is because they've had an unlucky bounce or a turnover here and there. But when they're playing their best, like what shot do the Giants have now?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time seeing it too. The one thing, and there is this narrative out there in some circles that Jalen Hurts looked really bad last year during the playoffs. Will he look as bad again this year? They've had a week off. Will he come out cold and just throw up the stinker? Even if that happens, I think this is going to be a close game. So Daniel Jones just faced I'm going to call them a horrible Vikings defense.
They're horrible. Yeah. Ed Donatel just lost his job. You can say that. Horrible defense.
Not good.
That defense is atrocious. So we're looking at Daniel Jones now. I'm seeing all over Twitter, pay this man, give him a contract. And I'm just thinking, pump the brakes. Okay, he's not the Daniel Jones. Brian Dable cleaned up a lot of his mistakes, cleaned up the turnovers. But he's still Daniel Jones. He's not all of a sudden, he hasn't transformed him into this generational quarterback right now that's going to go out there and go toe-to-toe with anybody. So I don't see yet. Look, the Giants are well coached. They did last time they played Philly, like you had in the Legit Football newsletter this morning. Giants were missing some key players on defense. So, but still, Philly came out. They pretty much dominated that game. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm trying to search for a path for the Giants here. I think there would have to be just bad, undisciplined play by Philly, bad penalties, just untimely turnovers, that sort of thing for the Giants to just take advantage of. And Brian Dable's a hell of a coach. So, would I be shocked if the Giants snuck away with the win? I don't know that I would be absolutely shocked, but it would surprise me.
I don't think there's any games this weekend where I would be absolutely shocked. Honestly, yeah. I could at least see an outside chance. There were games last week. Honestly, if the Dolphins beat the Bills, I would have been shocked. If the Seahawks beat the Niners, I would have been shocked. This week, it's unlikely for some of these games, but I wouldn't be completely shocked. But I think there's a little bit of recency bias with how the Eagles kind of finished the season. If you look at the last 6 weeks, including the wild card, which they didn't play because they had a bye, 12th in DVOA overall, Giants are 13th. But if you take out the 2 weeks where Jalen Hurts was out, they jump all the way to 6th. There's literally a 6-spot difference when they had Gardner Minshew at quarterback. A lot of people also don't realize Lane Johnson has been out the last few weeks. They have the best offensive line in the NFL when healthy, and Lane Johnson is a huge part of that on the right tackle spot, and there's a big drop with his backup. He's back and healthy. If this is a team that has won in so many different ways, if they do get Jalen rattled a little bit, and the Giants' pass rush has been very good. Wink Martindale, who led the NFL in blitzing, has not been blitzing as much lately because Kayvon Thibodeau has been playing well. Azeez Ojulari, who I know is a little bit banged up. Dexter Lawrence has been the best nose tackle in the NFL, an all-pro. But it doesn't matter because then they'll run the ball well. Jalen Hurts has been good when he has to scramble. He's been good when he has to stay in the pocket. There hasn't really been like, well, if you force him to do this. No, they've been able to beat you in so many different ways. It's such a different team than last year, Rich. You mentioned their playoff appearance. So I got to pick the Eagles here. 7.5 is the spread. It's kind of hard to go on that in a division game. We saw the Dolphins and the Bengals struggle to pull off the Bills and the Bengals last week. So I don't know that, once again, like the previous game, I don't know that I would bet the spread there, but I just can't see a situation where at home, after a week off at full strength, this Eagles team is going to lose to the Giants. It's been a great season. The stat at the bottom that Anthony has up right now, the Jaguars and the Giants entered the regular season 150 to 1 odds to win the Super Bowl. So wow. Giants fans, even more than Jacksonville, just be glad you're here. Right, guys?
Yeah, this hurts my heart seeing a New York team. But look, I grew up close to Giant Stadium, so I do have there is a small spot in my heart for the Giants, and I know a lot of Giants fans. I would love to say they're going to come out, they're going to put up a good show, they're going to win. I don't see it. Jalen Hurts, we can talk about his playoff appearance last year. He didn't have A.J. Brown. That is a big tool in his belt right now. That almost sounded weird, but you know what I mean. Like, that's another.
I viewed it as like Batman. I don't know what angle you were going
Oh, yeah,
for,
okay, all right, good.
Yeah, utility belt. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
okay.
No, go ahead. Let's hear your thoughts, and then let's go around and pick this game and move on to Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. Unless Jalen Hurts is like 100% compromised, then I think that's the only way New York can potentially stay in the game. I just feel like the Jags, this was an important year for the Giants to take that next step of development, and they have. Now I feel like they're playing a little bit above their weight class, and reality will come crashing down over them. I don't expect this game to be particularly close unless turnovers happen, which is kind of what kept the Dolphins in it with the Bills last week. I just feel like from top to bottom, Philadelphia's the better team. I expect the Eagles to pull away.
So before we go into the Sunday games, we don't have. If you happen to be a 30 minutes of football follower, you know that we have halftime. Well, we're not having halftime on the Legit Football Podcast, but I'm going to take a minute to address some news. So Cincinnati plays in the Sunday game. Played the Ravens last week, so we're going to tie this into Baltimore. That's the segue. You see how I did that, guys? The offensive coordinator Greg Roman has stepped down, which is, I think they pushed him out. Lamar Jackson, they've said repeatedly that he's the 200% chance. I think it was Eric DeCosta said that he's going to be back next year. John Harbaugh seems to be confident as well. They're going to involve him in the OC search. Rich, I know you have some thoughts of Lamar, so I'm really teeing this up for you. Do you think that letting go of Greg Roman out the door, that offense has gotten progressively worse since his MVP season, is that enough to keep Lamar in the building?
I think Lamar's sticking point is the contract. I think if they tell him we are going to guarantee you the Deshaun Watson contract, we're going to beat you. We're going to beat that contract, and we're going to guarantee it. I don't think Greg Roman being there or not being there would affect his decision whatsoever. So there, John Harbaugh is saying, well, Lamar's going to be involved in this choice of the new offensive coordinator. Yeah, he could be involved in it. Say, yeah, hire that guy. Is there anything else you need from me before I leave? That might be the situation.
Here's my stamp, and here's my resignation.
So that's how I feel about the Lamar Jackson situation. He doesn't have an agent representing him, so he doesn't have anybody there that has dealt with this sort of thing and can kind of maybe bring him back to reality or explain both sides to him and then explain his side to, kind of be that mediator who's handled this and knows the ins and outs of what needs to be said and whatnot. He knows he wants that contract and he's going to stand firm on it. And I don't know that the Ravens are going to give him that. If they can get 2 firsts, like if, let's say the Dolphins, for example, they sign him to an offer sheet after the draft. Well, they can get the 24 and the 25th first rounds from Miami. So they might look at that and say, well, you know what, we can roll with Tyler Huntley. If a guy falls to us in the draft this year, okay, maybe we'll take a look at him, but we'll have draft capital over the next 2 years to address this position if we need to. So, I can talk about this forever, so I don't want to take all the time.
Even, I would say 4 to 5 years ago, this is the kind of conversation where all the media people would have it, but we'd all, at the end of the day, wouldn't be surprised when he comes back. But we have seen a number of precedent-shifting moves with quarterbacks, big-name quarterbacks, in the offseason where they have ended up on different teams. Deshaun Watson, we mentioned him specifically, the contract that's tied to him. He did that with Houston before all the allegations came out. Russell Wilson didn't end well for him, at least not after 1 year, but the same thing. All the speculation, will he, won't he? And some people are like, hey, I'll stay with Seattle. He didn't. He ended up in Denver. So Kim Bowie, with that in mind, and he is a free agent, but the Ravens have the franchise tag. But if they franchise tag him, does he just do what Deshaun did? And I'm just going to sit out. I'm just refused to play on the franchise tag. Where do you put the odds of him, or the percentage chance of him staying in Baltimore versus him forcing a trade? Because it will be a trade. If nothing else, they'll tag and trade him. They won't just let him go sign as a free agent. Which side of the fence do you sit on?
I think right now it's 60%, just based upon the organization saying the right things. He's a huge part of our program. We want him back as soon as possible. Things of that nature. But I think the baseline.
That's 40%. That's
I know.
That's not small. That's a big chance that Lamar Jackson, who's been the face of Baltimore, ends up on a different team next year.
Yeah, because I'm kind of with PFD. Like, all right, until the contract is like on the table and he signs it, then we can both confirm he's back. And I think the
guaranteed
baseline,
contract. That's
guaranteed.
Yeah.
They gave him a generous offer during the
Right.
season too, which he turned down.
Right.
So.
Yep.
which he turned down. And I think the benchmark in my eyes is probably $200 million guaranteed. I think it has to start there, and then everything else on top of that, we can all speculate certain things of that nature. He's won an MVP. He's won a playoff game. He's kind of elevated them back into relevance after the Joe Flacco era, things of that nature. So in his eyes, he deserves it. I don't blame him, but I personally think Baltimore should probably move on. I think they should tag him, trade him potentially, get some picks back, because I have durability concerns, and to keep it a buck, I don't think he's progressed that well as a passer since his MVP season. I can make a case he's somewhat regressed. So that's kind of the cat and mouse game that they have to decide and work through. But it sounds like 60% chance he's probably going to come back due to everything that they're saying right now. And optically, they let go of Greg Roman. So they want Lamar to be as comfortable as possible in a new offensive system that they plan to build around him for the foreseeable future.
Can I chime in real quick, if you don't mind, Brian? The other thing, what he said about the passing, there have been stats going around looking at Lamar's passing and blaming Greg Roman, saying he's not letting him pass. But if we inflate these stats and have look at Brady's numbers and Rodgers' numbers, how often they pass, and we kind of inflate those stats, Lamar's numbers aren't too far off from that. That's a tough argument to make, because if they knew he was going to pass that much, they would play defense, teams will play defense a little differently than him. Do you guys think, though, we're talking about the contract, you said $200 million guaranteed. Do you think that owners around the NFL took a look at this? This is a little conspiracy theory, maybe. Took a look at the Deshaun Watson contract. We know they weren't happy about it. We know some owners have been vocal about it, and said, guys, we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't let that happen. We can't let this be a thing that just keeps happening where we're guaranteeing guys, because then it's the snowball starts, right? Every quarterback's contract is guaranteed. Then we're going on to receivers next. And all of a sudden everybody wants guaranteed contracts, and the NFL becomes the Wild West. Do you think owners are getting together, and with this Lamar situation specifically, saying, just have an unwritten, agreement between each other saying, we're not going to do this?
100% yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There was reports out that they already were addressing the Haslams, the owners in Cleveland, for doing the contract. And I think they've got a little bit more fuel because, and I know it's a somewhat small sample size, but Watson looked like a turd this year. How do you justify $230 million fully guaranteed? And he looked worse than the guy, Jacoby Brissett, who was starting the first half of the season for you. How does any organization, but specifically the Ravens, who have never been known to do these kind of deals, they all, like the Steelers, we stay in the AFC North, these are organizations that have always done things that are best for the entire organization and not necessarily bow down to one particular player. That's why Antonio Brown left with the Steelers. So I just can't see, especially with the data you have, with Watson's playing, since week 11, that there's any scenario where Baltimore agrees to that much guaranteed. I just can't. So I think Kim Bowie's right. He thinks they should. I think they will. Not that they want to. I think they let go of Greg Roman. They're going to say all the right things to Lamar. They're going to get him involved in the process. They're going to try to get him down off of that guaranteed demand, as opposed to moving themselves up. And if it doesn't get there, then I think they tag and trade him. Kim Bowie, what do you think?
I agree. I think that's exactly how the business side will be. I think they're going to get him into a room, tell him all the right things. But when it comes down to the monetary decisions, they're going to have a price tag. He's going to have a price tag. And I just don't think those price tags will align with each other. And another telling thing about the conspiracy that PFD brought up, I think the Ravens were the ones that were the most outspoken about the Deshaun deal. I think somebody from their brass was the first one to kind of speak up and be like, we can't let this happen, because they know Lamar's coming down the pipeline and he's going to bring that same monetary contract deal to the negotiation table and be like, I want an MVP, which Deshaun has never done. And I'm a face of your franchise and a reliable brand that you can't really say about Deshaun because of the situation he was in. So I just look at it, at the end of the day, ideally, I don't really see this ending well. But
he also,
I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
His injuries also haven't come from running. He's not a reckless runner. He's smart. Slides when he needs to. I'm going to take a drink of water real quick.
Yeah, please. He gets verklempt when he talks about Lamar. He gets verklempt.
Yeah.
He slides when he needs to. He gets out of bounds when he needs to. He's not a reckless runner. He's a finesse runner. And his injuries, he had the ankle and the knee, but they came in the pocket. They weren't on runs. So I think he's also looking at that saying, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm smart. So I'm worth this. You're not going to have to worry about me getting re-injured doing something reckless.
The last thing I'm going to add, and we're going to talk about this a lot in the offseason, Rich, you and I, we'll have you on again. We'll have lots of discussions about this, about Rodgers, unless he tells us soon what he's doing. Lots of QB, Brady, whatever. But I actually would not, even though there's conspiracies, and I think that has been an unwritten thing, I would not be surprised if there's a rogue owner outside of Baltimore who would do something like that. I'm thinking, I don't know, David Tepper in Carolina. Somebody who's just like, I don't care. He hasn't owned the Panthers all that long, and he's desperate to have a winning franchise, and he might feel their quarterback away. So no more speculation. Good talk. We will revisit that many times in the offseason. Let's jump into the last two divisional round playoffs. As we mentioned, staying in the AFC North. Cincinnati Bengals, Buffalo Bills. We got to see 18 plays of them a few weeks ago before the horrible thing that happened to DeMar Hamlin. So awesome to see how he's doing. So now we get to see a full game. It is in Buffalo. Last time it was in Cincinnati. Bills favored by 5. The line is at 5, which I find interesting. This game, not surprisingly, is the hardest game for me to pick. Rich, I'll start with you on this one. How do you see this one playing out?
Okay, for me, this comes down to the quarterbacks. Neither team has an outstanding secondary. So, we look at Buffalo, we look at Cincinnati. Buffalo's got Stephon Diggs, and then what I consider to be just a bunch of guys. On the other side, you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So the check goes to Cincinnati in that department, in the receiver department. Cincinnati can also run the ball better. But the real sticking point for me is who is more likely to make a game tide-turning mistake, error, interception, fumble. That is Josh Allen, hands down. He's got a lot of – he's being compared to Brett Favre left and right lately, and I think that's an absolutely fair comparison. He might even be more reckless than Brett Favre. Brian Dable was there and helped him clean that up because that was a knock on him coming out of college, and he has regressed this year without Brian Dable there. He's 22 turnovers this season, including last week. He tries to be Superman, and he has to be Superman, I think, because they need him to be. Joe Burrow will not make those mistakes. Joe Burrow is a guy that I have such a hard time betting against because I'm not trying to compare him to Tom Brady, but I would just get this feeling when Brady would take the field, I would get this feeling of, man, no matter what, this guy is going to somehow overcome whatever he needs to overcome. We saw Burrow do it against the Titans last year, 9 sacks. Nobody gave them a chance to beat the Chiefs in Kansas City. They did that. They were a play away from beating the Rams in the Super Bowl. I think when it comes down to it, I look at the quarterbacks. I'm not going to pick Josh Allen over Joe Burrow. This isn't a knock on Josh Allen, but I feel more comfortable.
It's a little bit of a knock, maybe. But let's talk about the 9 sacks, because I think that relates to this game. We talked the 9 sacks. That was a record for a team that ended up winning against Tennessee last year. Jonah Williams, their left tackle, ruled out. Alex Kappa, starting right guard, ruled out. Lyle Collins has been out. They are missing 3 of their 5 starting offensive line in all recent weeks. It's not like they've had weeks where they've been playing great without these guys. It was basically 3 consecutive weeks they lost these guys. It's a pretty easy argument to make that their offensive line is even worse right now than it was at this time last year. And if you've got Tennessee, fine. They're not going to put up enough points even last year where they were playing much better than the Bills will against, without Awuzie, their top corner, who's been out for, suffered a season-ending injury. They have been very susceptible in the secondary. Josh Allen, he's going to make some mistakes, but he's going to make some Superman plays too. My biggest concern for the Bengals is that Burrow's going to be under so much pressure, he won't get to do what he likes to do. He loves to throw in timing. If they can disrupt that timing either by pressing these great receivers just to delay another second and having that pass rush, and we saw it against Baltimore. Baltimore has not been a great pass rush team, but they were able to get pressure on Burrow in the wildcard game last week. I'm not sure that's enough to overcome. What are your thoughts with that angle, Cam Bowie?
All fair assessments. Look, I think a big concern that kind of PFD, attributed to Josh Allen has just been very turnover prone. So I think that's an element that's going to be a big concern. But we have an offensive line like the Cincinnati Bengals have that's kind of beat up. May have guys in and out of the lineup. The ability to run the football will be important. So I kind of look at the Bengals maybe bringing the same game plan they had against Baltimore to Buffalo, because they're going to want to keep Buffalo's offense off the field. They want to control the line of scrimmage, and they also want to protect Burrow from getting killed every time he drops back. So wouldn't be surprised if we see a heavy dose of Joe Mixon, a heavy dose of Samaje Perine, maybe some quick game potentially, which is an extension of the run game as well, to protect Burrow's offensive line from really putting their quarterback in terror. So I think that's the game plan that they're going to potentially lean on. And I think the Bills, and I've been saying this for a while now, I think they're more of a run-based team now. They've ran the ball particularly well the last month of December. They ran it particularly well against the Dolphins. I don't understand this heavy notion that Ken Dorsey's putting on this offense that consists of Allen having to take deep shots and elongated passing concepts 50% of the time. I don't get it. They don't really need to do so. Singletary and Cook have done a pretty good job running the football. Josh Allen is a pretty dynamic person with his legs. I think this game may come down to which team runs the football well enough to keep the other offense off the field and allow their offense to have a semblance of balance that keep the opposition's defense on their heels. So that's really going to be the big key in my eyes.
I'm just worried about, even if they want to run the ball, that offensive line, that is the biggest difference between when they played now and a few weeks ago, which is crazy that they've lost that many offensive linemen since then, and the fact that it is in Buffalo. Anthony put at the bottom it's going to be 32 degrees and freezing. I actually don't think that's not like frozen tundra and Lambeau temperatures. Yeah. Since Cincinnati plays in Ohio, that the weather I don't think is be a factor. But it'll be a Buffalo home crowd that has had Super Bowl aspirations all year. They're going to be pumped. Playing in Buffalo, the offensive line issues, I'm going to pick Buffalo to edge this out. I think this will be the closest game of all the games on the divisional round docket. Part of it is I picked the Bills in the preseason to win the Super Bowl, and I kind of want to roll with them. I understand that this would be the least surprising if Cincinnati ends up picking. I think most people in the media are actually picking the Bengals to win this game. But the Bengals haven't really been blowing people out even when they had their offensive line. They've always found ways to win. Absolutely agree with you, Rich. Burrow has that Brady factor. That is his biggest thing, is he's just so good mentally that he's not going to make mistakes, and he always seems to make the right decision. And he's even better physically than Brady because he's got the ability to use his legs when he needs to. I just think it's going to be a little bit too much to overcome with just being such a drop in offensive line play. They won't be able to run the ball. He'll have to get the ball out super quick and maybe not be able to develop those routes with those superstar wide receivers. On the other side of the ball, they don't really have the talent as it stands now to slow down the Bills' passing offense. So I'm going to edge and say the Bills win this game probably by 2 or 3. So definitely bet Cincinnati to cover. Rich, your picks.
Let me ask you a question. How good would you say on a scale of 1 to 10 Miami's offensive line is?
Not good at all.
Not good at all.
With the injuries that they had, Teron Armstead played, but he was really beat up. They were without their starting right tackle. They had to move Robert Hunt, who was a guard, to right tackle, and the Bills were able to get pressure. But it was not the offense that won the game for the or kept the game close for the Dolphins. It was the defense making opportunistic plays against Josh Allen.
Right. Okay. But I can attribute that to Josh Allen also making mistakes.
True.
And I think with the way Miami's offensive line is, when you have Skylar Thompson back there, there is no excuse. Absolutely no excuse for that game to be nearly as close as it was. We were texting each other during that game. You were shocked during the game.
I was.
Wow, Miami was in it. Now, I know a couple bounces went Miami's way, but still, when you're supposed to be this force of a team, the Buffalo Bills, the high and mighty Buffalo Bills, who were favored by Brian McFadden to go to the Super Bowl, you have to do better than that. You have to come out and just knock all that aside in that game. If Miami knew when the difference between first down and fourth down, Buffalo wins that game.
You can look at the other side of it. The Bengals needed a fumble at the goal line and a 98-yard scoop and score from Sam Hubbard to beat a backup quarterback in Baltimore.
Everybody's pointing to that, but I will say Baltimore's defense is far and away better than...
Yes.
Yeah.
Agree with that. Top 5 defense to end the season.
And Tyler Huntley has been in that situation before where he's had to come in and play for Lamar, and they don't really lose much. They run basically the same type of offense. Lamar's more dynamic, but Huntley run essentially the same offense. So I don't know that it's definitely not going from Tua to Skylar Thompson. But I don't know. For all those reasons that I just laid out and the Joe Burrow factor, we can look at the offensive line, but they had that same narrative for him last year. His offensive line's terrible. He's going to get killed by Tennessee. He's going to get killed by Kansas City. Didn't happen. Didn't even happen against the Rams offensive line.
And ultimately, though, you could argue that is the single reason they lost, because Aaron Donald was able to get in
it was still a close
game,
though. It was still such a close game, and you had and you're playing a Sean McVay-led team with as many weapons as the Rams had. Yeah. I don't know. I'm giving the edge to. It's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a close game, but in a tight situation like that, I like Joe Burrow to come out on top.
Yeah, I agree as well. If Von Miller was there, he's a huge part of the Bills' pass rush, then I'd leave Buffalo. Then everything Brian said would make a lot of sense to me. But Miami's offensive line wasn't that great either, and Skylar had a lot of time to throw the football. He was hurt by drops in the first half, and then in the second half, he low-key turned into a pumpkin. And we kind of understand why he's a 7th-round pick. But he had time nonetheless. And so I just feel like with Cincinnati, they're probably going to use elements of that Dolphins game plan, run the football, quick game, eventually to keep the defense on their heels. And then those deep shot plays will be there because Buffalo's secondary hasn't been good throughout the year. A lot of that's due to injury. A lot of that is due with mix and match lineups. I don't think those things will change, even with the rumor of Micah Hyde may return. So I like the Bengals as well. I think it's going to be close. But kind of like PFD said, I just trust Burrow to make the right plays in comparison to Josh Allen. I think this has been a really weird year from Josh Allen from start to finish. And I don't think his bad habits are going to go anywhere. I think this is what he's been all season. He's going to live and die by it. And I think he dies by it Sunday night.
First of all, I just want to say I love that you keep calling him PFD. I just like the sound of that. Yeah, PFD. So PFD,
I thoroughly enjoy that, by the way.
Yes, nice. And second, I'm glad you brought up the Von Miller part. That is one thing. So before Von Miller went out, they were top 5 in pressure rate with their front four. They're 29th or 30th since then. It is a gigantic drop-off with pressure rate. The Bills have actually started to blitz a lot more to kind of compensate for that. They haven't necessarily been successful with that. So if they get pressure, it will have to be with the blitz. Burrow's been fantastic against the blitz, so I can see that. Still sticking with my Bills pick. Kamburi, are you officially picking the Bengals in this one then?
I am.
Okay. So let's go into the last game. San Francisco 49ers. The Brock Purdy carousel ride continues into the divisional round. Mr. Irrelevant is undefeated as an NFL starter. Let's just throw that out there. He has never lost an NFL game. Dallas Cowboys coming off Dak, one of his best performances perhaps of his career last week against the Bucs. A Bucs team that I think I underestimated. This is the only game I got wrong. I did pick the Bucs to win. I believed in the Brady factor, PFD. And at the end of the day, I forgot that the Cowboys are just a much better team than Tampa Bay this year. And Dak played one of the best actual quarterback performances of the next-gen stats era. He was 11th in EPA added amongst all quarterbacks since 2000. He would have to do that a second game in a row against the far and away the best defense in the NFL. I'm not sure he has it in him, but I'd love to hear from you guys. Kambui, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I don't think he has to do all that. Geno Smith for a half was decent. And if he doesn't turn the ball over in the red zone when it's a 6-point game at the beginning of the third, maybe that's a different game as well. I've thought for a while, ever since Richard Sherman has, left the team, retired, so to speak, the Niners defense is basically defined by their front seven. If they're able to get pressure, then that opens everything up on the back end that's very opportunistic. If you have time, then you're able to win some very favorable one-on-one matchups. We saw DK Metcalf give Charvarius Ward the business for the first half as well. I really like Dallas because my concern with the Niners is during the Brock Purdy era, they haven't really played an elite defense. Heck, I don't think they've really played a complete team yet. And so I just feel Micah Parsons, that front seven for the Dallas Cowboys, the playmakers they have on the back end led by Trevon Diggs, they'll make enough plays that might put the Niners offensively behind the 8 ball. And we haven't really seen Brock Purdy have to play catch-up. I mean, the closest he's played to that was when they played the Raiders, and he almost gave the game away a little bit down the stretch. So I like Dallas because I feel Dak can come in, not have to put up the numbers he put up in the wild card game, but be decent enough. They have a running game that I think that can put the pass rush on their knees enough to be susceptible. And then defensively, they can take the ball away with the best of them. I think they're top 5 in takeaways. They may even lead the league in takeaways. And that's enough to beat a team like the Niners with the 7th-round rookie quarterback at the helm.
How do you guys feel about the fact that, I've got the DVA over the last 6 weeks. I like to look at that as opposed to the whole season. Dallas is 20th in overall DVA. They are the worst team in DVOA the last 6 weeks of the remaining 8 teams in the playoffs. 26th in pass defense. That's an important stat because the problems they had prior to last week's game, where the Bucs offensive line just played dreadful, is that if they don't get to the quarterback, which is a big if, because Micah Parsons can literally wreck a game by himself. DeMarcus Lawrence, what a fantastic, as a number 2, he was always a studly number 1 pass rusher. But if they don't get to the quarterback, and this Shanahan offense is always going to scheme people open, I don't care what defense it is, I just don't know that they're able to put together that same performance against the Niners at Levi's Stadium. Does that change you guys' perspectives at all, Rich?
Look, Geno Smith did have a good first half against San Francisco, but Geno Smith has been pretty efficient all year, and this was his 3rd time facing that defense. So that doesn't surprise me so much that he did that. Like I said, I picked them to win. In that first half also, Brock Purdy had a few bad passes that could have been picked off, and that could have blown the game open a little bit for Seattle. That being said, he was nearly flawless in the second half. He was just phenomenal. That pass to Elijah Mitchell that he made on a scramble, that was a thing of beauty. I mean, my jaw dropped when I saw that. To see a guy
something
of his,
Jimmy G couldn't dream of doing.
No, and that was where I'm leading. Like that. I think Brock. We talked about Brock Purdy. Kawhi, you just said. I'm sorry, I messed up your name.
Kauai, he's thinking of Hawaii here. DFD wants a vacation in Hawaii, I think.
You mentioned not being, having to come from behind. We never really saw Jimmy G have to come back from behind and get into these shootouts. That's not really the style San Francisco plays. I think Brock Purdy is a better version of Jimmy G. He does exactly what Shanahan wants him to do, and he can move a little bit. So I don't, he might throw a couple of bad passes here and there. He might even throw a pick here and there, but that team is so well-rounded. And I have so much trouble trusting Dak Prescott to put up back-to-back good games, trusting Kellen Moore to put together back-to-back good game plans, to beat a team like this San Francisco that is just a well-buttoned up team. I mean, they're good in all facets of the game. I think that is such a tall order for Dallas, and I don't know that I have a lot of faith in Dak to do that. You made all great points about the defense. Defense can come out and play well, but for me, it's so hard for me to see Dak being able to just put together another game like that in a big spot like this.
You mentioned on your latest short, YouTube video and TikTok about how he led the league in interceptions. And he didn't play 5 games when Cooper Rush was in.
That was a John Chapman stat that I stole, by the way.
And we mentioned a similar stat in our preview last week where I was expecting the Bucs to win that game. The Niners, number 1 in DVOA for the entire last half of the season, and especially over the last 6 weeks. And here's a surprising stat, Kimbui. Number 1 in offense DVOA.
Yeah, I mean, look, Christian McCaffrey is the real MVP in that offense. When he came in, he's been in the starting lineup. I think they're undefeated this year, and honestly, that allowed them offensively.
The Chiefs. So his first game, they actually got blasted by the Chiefs, but ever since then, yes, they have won 11 straight.
Exactly. I don't think he started that. Did he start that game though? He might have.
Maybe not started, but he played. He played.
Yeah, he played.
He had
played
some
for sure.
20 snaps or something.
Right. And I think when they played Seattle last week, McCaffrey really opened up that game in the second half. They started featuring him a lot more in the running game. That forced Seattle to kind of have to step up, creep up a little bit. That opens up those crossing route combinations. McCaffrey's also a threat outside of the backfield as a receiver. Dallas's best bet to kind of neutralize San Fran's offense is to kind of find a way to take him out of the game. Really can't take him out of the game, so to speak, but if you're able to stop those up the middle runs, if you're able to tackle him in space when he does get pass catching opportunities, that'll go a long way. Brock, he has a ton of playmakers around him. It's really pick your poison. It's McCaffrey some drives, Kittle some others. Then you have Ayuk. Didn't even mention Deebo Samuel. So it's gonna be tough. It's
who
a
do
lot.
you double team? Who do you?
Right.
You can't. This is the Shanahan offense that he has always wanted, is to have playmakers, versatile playmakers at every point on the offense. Every single one of those guys can play in the slot. You could put Kittle in the slot. You could put McCaffrey in the slot. You could put Deebo in the backfield. Ayuk has the ability to stretch the defense deep. It's like, we talked about the weakness in the Eagles in general, especially on the defense. Where's the weakness in this Niners offense? And we're not even talking about the best defense in the NFL. So it's just so hard to find a weakness. To me, the only weakness, and I know he's undefeated and he's a great story, is still that they have a rookie 7th round, last pick in the draft starting. He has been known to throw. His accuracy is still not exactly there. He'll throw some errant passes. Decision-making has been very good, but he's little splotches here and there will make bad decisions. We saw it in the first half last week against the Seahawks. That's it. Can Micah Parsons wreck your... I think, Kibo, you mentioned they haven't faced an elite defense. That much is true. The best defense they faced really is Washington, and they're like 11th as far as pressure rate. Now you have to face DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons and Trevon Diggs on the back end, who will catch those passes that are errant.
Or he'll also get burnt too.
Yeah, he'll also get burnt, 100%. And I'm not sure that the way they play defense, which is so aggressive, works against the Shanahan offense because, as I mentioned, they will scheme guys open. Yeah. They're not really going to burn you over the top, but if you don't tackle properly, if Diggs goes for a pick, misses, nobody's going to tackle Deebo after that, right? You're giving him just a wide open yak situation. Let's go around and make our official picks and wrap up divisional round preview. Start with you, Rich.
I am picking San Francisco. I don't think this game is going to, the score might be closer than the game feels throughout. I just think San Francisco's going to control it. And again, we saw Dallas last year. Sometimes they make weird decisions on the coaching staff. They're just, they're pretenders to me. They
remember the Dak sneak against these Niners in last year's playoffs.
They kind of look the part, and then but I'm not buying it. I'm going San Francisco. I think they're going to control this game. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout, but I don't think it'll feel close throughout.
I'm not so sure it won't be a blowout.
Maybe it will.
3.5 points is the spread for the Niners at home. Generally, you can say Vegas these days gives like a 2-point edge. They're saying the Niners are only 1.5-point favorites on a neutral field over the Cowboys. How do you feel about that, and who are you picking in this game?
I'm rolling with Dallas. This is one I had to kind of sleep on. I had to do the same with Dallas and Tampa last week. I picked a better football team. I just feel with the Cowboys.
He's 6-0. He's probably right. We're probably
I picked Dallas last week too.
right.
So I'm just wrong.
But I just feel like with Dallas, Dak, I get it. He played out of his mind. He was a huge catalyst in the moving on. I don't think he necessarily needs to play that way again. But I do think they can establish the run game. I do think they can get some play action pass concepts going their way. And defensively, I just feel outside of Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons is one of the most unblockable front linemen in the league. And I think the Niners are going to have a tough time containing him a lot. and I think he's going to make enough of an impact to make Brock Purdy think about him enough to where errant passes will be thrown. And then thing with Dallas, one of the higher takeaway teams in the league, they're going to get a couple of takeaways as well, translate them into points. I see them going in a Levi Stadium, pulling off the upset, and going to the NFC Championship game for the first time in a long time to play the Eagles.
That would be an all NFC East NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Because
And we called them the NFC least.
We did a couple years ago.
hey, we take our L's. We take our L's here.
Yeah.
This is probably the pick I'm most confident in. Maybe KC Jacks too. I think San Francisco's going to roll away with this. I think they're not only going to win, they're going to cover that. I think the Cowboys will play tough at first, but I do not think what we saw last week. I think that was more of a reflection of the Bucs are just a bad football team. The only reason they're in the playoffs is because they played in the worst division in football. Yeah, they have Brady, but nothing was sinking on that team. Byron Leftwich is now gone. Todd Bowles, for whatever reason, is a fantastic defensive coordinator, not a good head coach. PFD, you know about that personally from his time with the Jets. I just don't think we see a flawless Dak game. We need a really bad Bucs. The Bucs, I think, were 29th and 30th in pass defense DVOA for the last half of the season going into that game. And now you play the Niners and the best linebacker duo, a tandem in the NFL, one of the best front four in the NFL, and a defense, the secondary, that's actually been really solid. Their one weakness, Lenoir, had a 90 PFF grade. You can't even pick on him. Dallas is going to make mistakes on offense, and the defense is going to be a little too aggressive, get themselves in bad situations. I think the Niners win, and they win big. That wraps up.
Sorry. I talk too much, Brian. You know
no,
that.
There's no such. See, that's why we're not 30 minutes here, Rich. We don't have to cap it. You got thoughts? Let's hear your thoughts.
Brian's a big 49ers homer, so it's not
I
surprised that
literally
he's predicting
minutes.
a blowout.
I live 20 minutes from the stadium, and I'm on a 49ers podcast every week. Yeah, I got a little bit of something for him.
But for every reason, for every reason you chose the Dallas Cowboys.
I love it. We're down to PFD and K.
PFD, yeah.
Love it.
For every reason you chose the Cowboys, those are exactly the same reasons why I chose Seattle last week. I thought Pete Carroll would make Brock Purdy throw. We haven't seen him in a big game, and I thought he was going to force mistakes. And to be fair, he almost did. They just happened to be drop balls. So everything you're saying is totally legitimate in my book. I don't trust Dallas whatsoever. That is the only reason I'm going the other way.
Hey, and I understand. My only thing with Seattle last week was they didn't have the pass rush that Dallas has. And I think Dak's better than Geno. So I kind of expected that game early on to be close, but I thought eventually the Niners front would overwhelm them over time. It did. And I thought, the Niners offensively would establish the run well enough to where they can have those route concepts go in their favor and they can make plays off of that. Just Dallas, I think schematically, substitution-wise, they have the team to beat the Niners. I think what it really just comes down to is, like you said, what type of Cowboys are we going to see? Like they could show up like they did last week, or it could be like last year at home and they look flat the whole game. And we're like, what happened? So
and we've seen this story way too many times with Dallas.
Yes,
for me to think they're going to go the other way. But it could happen. It's the NFL. It could happen.
Oh, anything could happen. Yeah. The last point I'll make is the Niners have been, short of a quarter or a half, the Niners have been so consistent. There's a reason they've won 11-0, or 11 of their past games. And the Cowboys are so much variance. So the Niners just have to do what they've been doing. The Cowboys need to play at the absolute top of their capability. They need a ceiling game for the second week in a row. It just seems hard to expect that on the road in the divisional round against not only one of the most talented rosters in the NFL, but the most creative play caller. They need everything to go their way, and I don't see that happening. But I can't wait to watch the games. The best weekend in football looks like it's living up to the billing. Thank you to Rich Jodice, the Pro Football Demon. As always, great time having you on. And Cam Bowie, great to have you back as well. Always bring some really insightful takes. Enjoy the games this weekend, guys. Thanks for watching, listening. Subscribe, like, comment, do all that stuff, yada, yada. We're still got 30 minutes of football if you want your football takes in a little bit more condensed version, but we're going to keep rolling this legit football NFL podcast all off season long as well, where we can get into some of those juicy takes where we just give Pro Football Demon the floor for 40 minutes to rant on Lamar Jackson. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for listening and watching. This has been the Legit Football Podcast. We'll see you next week. Enjoy.